have been here before. 8 questions can take us a good, at least an hour, because we always have so much to say. I will start with myself, and then I will let Cara and then Bruce introduce themselves. So my name is Dominique Chabot. I am the Family Support Manager with Autism Canada. I am a mother of 2 boys on the spectrum. I have a neurodivergent husband, and I've been with the organization for almost 5 years. I love what I do. I am thrilled to have met Cara and Bruce through this journey. And I would like to introduce you to Cara. So Cara?
Hello, I am an elementary school teacher by day, 10 months of the year, and I'm a university lecturer by night and summers. And I teach at the graduate level courses for soon-to-be teachers, so education courses, usually focused on special education, mental health, accessible education, and classroom neurodiversity. So I have a lot of experience with IEPs, with IEP meetings. I teach special education in my regular day-to-day elementary job. I am the author of a book called The Autism Lens, and I also have a podcast, Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Excellent. Thanks for being here again, Cara. We've been doing this for a few years now, and she's just one of my favorite people on the planet. Thank you, Cara. How about you, Bruce? You're also one of my favorite people.
No. Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Petherick. I am the Autistic Advocate at Autism Canada. By day, I'm the Autistic Advocate at Autism Canada. By night, I'm Batman. No, that's not right. In my previous life, I was a musician. I played around the world for 45 years and had extensive experience teaching both in Australia and Canada at the high school level, and also at, I'm going to say tertiary level at university and college, both in Australia and Canada. And coincidentally, I'm co-host at the moment of a podcast called Autistic Tidbits and Tangents with my beautiful, beautiful friend, Cara. And I'm looking forward to this because this is always fun.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. There's a few comments already in the chat, so I'm assuming these are people who are saying hello and welcome. Unless I'm wrong, I can't see the chat right now because I have
some nice words about the podcast. And
oh, lovely. Great. Thank you. All right. So the way this works is I will go ahead and read the questions. Now I'm struggling with Zoom today, and my my screen is kind of giving me a hard time. So I'm just going to see if I could squish some of you. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. So I could read the question. And then what we'll do is we elaborate on the questions. And if anyone has any comments or would like to add to this question, or if we haven't necessarily answered it to your liking, or if you have more that you want to add, please feel free to add it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'd be happy to answer any of those. So the first question today is, can you share some essential tips for caregivers on preparing for an IEP or IPP meeting and ensuring their child's needs are met effectively? This is a great one. Oh, Cara, I'm going to start with you.
So I just want to clarify that in session 2, this is session 3, we talked about before the IEP, and this is sort of, you've seen the IEP, you have a meeting about it, like what happens now once you have the IEP in hand? Mm-hmm. So one thing that's really important to always remember, you have the right to a translator being present at any of these administrative meetings. You have the right to bring someone with you if you want to have an advocate, you need a friend or family member, someone to take notes for you. So you want to go in and feel supported, and you will be. Like, schools want the best for your child, just like you want the best for your child. But it can be intimidating walking into a room and there's, 4 or 5 other people that you don't really know. So you want to go in feeling like you are prepared in those ways. Having read over the IEP, go through it, highlight anything you have questions about or anything that isn't quite clear that you don't understand, and certainly don't hesitate to ask questions. It's a great thing to ask for clarity, to ask what the purpose is of some of the goals, and sometimes, I've supported many parents through this process as well, and don't be afraid of even being emotional. Sometimes people get emotional in these meetings and then they feel embarrassed. Don't. That's perfectly legitimate. I really think these meetings, we always need to keep a reminder of the humanity, not only of the parent, but of the child that we're discussing. And we're all on the same page. That's the way I like to see it going into these things. So I would say, preparing to go into those meetings, those are the things I would say. I have other things that we can talk about later if there are questions about what to look for regarding goals, and what might be goals to change. But just entering the meeting, that's what I would do beforehand.
Thanks, Kara. Bruce?
Make sure you don't think of it as adversarial. Kara's raised a point, and I think we both, having experience as teachers, teachers at their core want the best for your children, and that's universal. The problem, sometimes people think, well, teachers are not giving enough attention, is because they've got 20 to 30 kids they're trying to give 100% of their attention. So teachers are supportive. Teachers want the best. But also, don't be frightened of saying, I don't agree with this, or no. Don't be frightened of saying no when you get the IEP, IPP documentation and it's saying some things that you just completely disagree with. Don't be frightened of saying that. And make sure the student is involved. Make sure the student has a voice in this process, whether it's through the caregiver or to being in the meeting with the caregiver and the teachers. Too often decisions are made without the actually autistic input. And I'm always going to say that's so super important. As soon as the student is old enough to be able to voice that opinion. And Karen and I've talked about this, I think, before. It's like, a 6-year-old has a voice. A 13-year-old has possibly a more mature voice and a deeper voice, and a 17-year-old has a lot of things to say. Saying somebody who has a 17-year-old child going through this at the moment. Yeah, so they're my tips. It's the balancing to the teacher, but also you can say no. You can say this is not right, this is not appropriate.
All right. So I'm going to play devil's advocate because I'm answering this question through a caregiver's perspective. And I had gone probably with my oldest, who is now 18. This is his final year in high school. And I had probably gone through 9 years of IEP meetings where I cried every single time. And it's not from a parent's perspective, although we understand how classrooms are large. The sizes are incredibly large nowadays. And we get that. But as a parent, I don't care about all those other kids. I care about my kid. And I want to make sure that my kid is getting the help that he deserves and that he needs. And there is a side of empathy from me towards the teachers, because I get that it's hard. I get that nowadays you're looking at, if you're getting a classroom of 25 children, 18, 19 out of them probably have an IEP, and it's a lot of work for the teachers. But you know what? That's still my kid going into your classroom. And I don't like to sit in a meeting to be told about all of the things that my child struggles with. I want to know what are the things that he's achieved? And I think that from my own experience, you dread that. And that's because my preliminary meetings 9 years ago were all about the negative, and it's jaded me, and it's made it very difficult for me to accept as a parent walking into these meetings and knowing that it's going to be a copy paste of the previous year. And it's going to be another fight. And as I don't want to look at it as and walking into something already knowing it's going to be a negative experience. It's just, that's all we as parents, is all we do is advocate, and it's all we do is we fight for our kids. We want what we feel they deserve. And this will be the first year, his senior year, where he is going to be part of the IEP. And I am looking forward to seeing how he advocates for himself, which is what this is really about. Because as a mother, although I feel like I've advocated strongly for my child, for both my kids, no one is better to advocate for themselves than the individual. And I'm really excited to see how he is going to perform at this meeting, and hopefully keep me calm, because I still get the EGBGs before I go into these things. So I think that, Cara and Bruce, you've provided me with a lot of positive insight, and I really appreciate that, because this is a question that seems to come up at every speaker series that we have, and that feeling still sits with me. Very difficult for a parent to walk into these. But if you have a great teacher like the both of you, right? If you have that open mind and that empathy, and that you understand what the caregiver is going through, it's so important for those caregivers out there, or those teachers out there, to say, I get it. I understand 100% how you must be feeling. How can we help you? And that alone will make a world of difference in that conversation.
And I would say
So,
too, Dominique,
go.
sorry.
Go.
I always see us as on the same side, because just like parents, teachers also want there to be more resources. We're always advocating for more as well. Because yes, there has been quite a significant increase in IEPs in classrooms, the number of students on IEPs. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a high school educator, and she said, 10 years ago, she would maybe have 4 students per class, and now she has upwards of 15 per class. And that's a lot of students to track and understand what their specific needs are. And you don't get extra time to read the IEP. So that's something you take home with you, or, you have to kind of make the time. And I think these meetings are so, so important, so that you can connect and build that relationship and build that understanding, and keep everyone's eye on the prize, focused on, what is in the best interest of this human being in our care. And Bruce and I talk all the time about the bringing in the voice of the student, because you can do that in many ways at many different ages. I think we have questions about it, so I'll save my thoughts.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Cara.
If I may, just to emphasize, I'm going to emphasize the point I make, but to agree with both what you just said. Dominic, I understand I understand certainly your history, and you and I have talked about this quite a lot. You've shared this. And I think the point I was trying to make about the adversarial is the teacher is your partner in this. And so you could disagree or not be happy with what's going on, but understand that the whole process is for everybody, as Cara said, everybody to be on the same side and everybody to be working together. And I think that's where I was talking about the adversarial, is not to go in going, I'm going to stamp my feet, because you do need to stamp your feet, but realize you're stamping your feet with the teacher, not against the teacher. In general, in utopia.
And I get that. I totally understand that. I just feel that perhaps what it is, we're all fighting, and that's where that anxiety comes in. We are all fighting for the same goals: more support, more resources. And again, I don't care about the other kids. It's my kid that matters here. I want this conversation to be about my children. And if they came back and said, well, we have so many kids in our classroom and so many, that doesn't faze me one bit. It's not about everybody else. This is about him. And I think that I want to be able to empathize with it. And I do empathize with the teachers. But something clearly needs to be done on a higher level about providing more supports to schools, because I think we all know that there's like a huge shortage in supports and teachers and everything else. So that's a completely different podcast, I think. I'm sure both of you will agree, and some parents here too. So let's move on to the next question. Or was there something in the chat that
Yes,
needed to be answered?
Graciela.
Oh, Graciela. Buenos Aires.
I think it is very important to see teachers as an ally, even if you feel intimidated at times. We are a team. And I think, like, again, co-regulation in meetings is important too, because, if teachers are anxious, it makes parents more anxious, and vice versa. So if either person sees it as an us versus them, the tension just seems to rise. And so, yeah, just take those deep breaths. I know I do that as a teacher as well. I think we do rub off on each other.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, I'm glad to see you back, Graciela. Okay, whoops. Okay, next question. What are the critical differences between advocating for children in kindergarten to grade 12 education settings and advocating for young adults in college or university regarding routines and executive function? I love this question. Oh, I have so much to say, but hopefully Cara and Bruce can filter some of that out. Go ahead, Cara. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, in college or university, by that point, you are hoping that it is your adult child who is doing the self-advocacy. I teach in a university. I have never dealt with a parent. I deal one-on-one with the adult. We talk about what they need, how I can support them better. So really, I would say from the time they enter school, you are slowly building their self-advocacy skills. What that looks like when they are, in kindergarten, you might be talking to them about what helps you when in these different situations, especially around transitions, because all IEPs have a transition plan. So you can find out, like, what times of day are hard. Is it difficult going between subjects? Is it difficult, when you're in grade 7 or 8 and you're going between classes? What are the things that help you? And getting your child to speak to their teacher when they have needs. Reminding them of their IEP accommodations that they are legally entitled to. You can coach your child how to do that. You can also still send an email when they're younger, but you gradually want to shift to your child taking over and having more of a voice, and bringing them into the IEP meetings is fantastic. I think you can definitely still do that in elementary. It's strongly encouraged in high school. I'm sure Dominique will tell us a little bit about that soon. But once it's universities, that it's college or university, generally speaking, you want to have them prepared. You want them to have all the documentation that they need. You can help them contact student support services. You can maybe talk with them about what they could potentially ask for, and role play those conversations. But it does come down to, they are the adult, they are the person the university deals with, or college.
Bruce?
As usual, what can I say more than Cara has said?
I'll ask you first next time then.
No. Actually, one thing, and Cara and I did have a little talk about this question early today, and it was only a very, very brief interchange. And one of the things that I think to emphasize with what Cara's just said is that the ideal goal is to build self-advocacy for the student, with the hope that when they get to the university or college level, that they're pretty good at the self-advocacy. And so what is the caregiver doing? The caregiver is morphing into an ally. And I think that's the important thing to remember, and especially to be engendering in the community around a student. And that could be brothers, sisters, friends, encouraging that community of allyship, because much as I sit here and go, yeah, the whole role is to become a self-advocate and things, and I'm turning 60 next week. I can be the worst self-advocate in the world, and lots of my close and personal people remind me how bad I am at self-advocacy, and so that's where I need the allies, and I think this is something that, from a caregiver's perspective, could be something in your thought process as you're going through this 12 years of pre-university practice. Is not only building self-advocacy, but turning yourself into an ally. It's at the college level, seeing a parent is warning bells, to be honest with you. It's honestly never a good thing. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. At the start of a semester, it's not a good thing, because instantly you're not sure, from the professor's perspective, to whom am I speaking? Am I speaking to a student, or do I need to speak to the caregiver? However, if there are some problems after the first couple of weeks, make sure that you're responding as an ally, rather than trying to take the advocacy. Because college universities are not built for anybody else to advocate beside the student.
Okay. So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench, because that's what I do. Not from a personal experience, but I've received many calls and emails, and one in particular kind of resonated with me. And this was from a caregiver of a young adult who was transitioning over to the individual was in a mainstream classroom, but he had an IEP and needed partial support. So essentially what that would mean was, the student was in a mainstream classroom, but had an opportunity to work with an EA for some one-on-one, more theoretical topics or subjects, or just a place where they can self-regulate. And a lot of high schools offer this opportunity for their students who are kind of like a level one, who can manage in mainstream, but just kind of need that extra little support. This caregiver said that their child did not want their IEP to follow them to college, and their child did not want to do with the accessibility programs offered on campus, and their child wanted to do whatever they could to blend in. So how would a parent support this kind of decision? Is this because, as individuals who are overly familiar with masking, this would probably mean it's a 50-50 shot, but I mean, this student could end up having well, actually, this particular student did end up having an autistic break, because they ended up home by Christmas. Then they took the year off, and then they found a school that would accommodate their IEP and their accommodations, whatever it is that the student was asking for. But that was a whole year and a whole it was an experience that was difficult for this student, and it was a hard lesson for them to learn, and an expensive one to learn as well. So where would this fall? What would you recommend in a case like this?
Bruce?
Oh yes, thank you, Cara. And yes, I've also had questions. And in fact, we have a conference coming up in 2 weeks at Autism Canada where this question is discussed a couple of times. Let me put my autistic advocate hat on. My job will be finished when this story doesn't happen. When an autistic individual or any neurodivergent individual is completely okay with going on to the third level of education and taking the IEP and taking all the supports that are available. My job will be finished then, because we've turned into a world where our difference is completely accepted. And I do understand the what's the good word? The germ of the individual's desire here. They want to be normal. It is a crash and burn situation, though, and that's kind of a little brutal. You are going from 12 years of being supported, going into a more complex situation, and the student is asking for all the supports to be removed, and that is it can be a recipe for problems. It also can be that's just the switch that the individual needed, and that they can manage themselves from that point on, and that's fantastic. Obviously, I think to answer the question you asked about the caregiver, I would very much recommend the caregiver strongly encourage that the IEP and supports are still taken into the first year at least, and that the student to be encouraged strongly to use whatever support systems are there. Because we've talked about transition. Transition's been mentioned. The transition between high school to university, I think, from an education perspective, I think it's the biggest transition in the whole. You know, it's always that. You know, the first couple of seconds of life is difficult, but so the last couple of seconds, like that last jump, it's a big one. It is a big one, and I would strongly encourage any supports that you can use, that you can take. Now, if that's not the case and the student wants to do that, then it's okay. It is honestly okay if somebody crashes and burns at university at first year level. And I don't mean that to be kind of blasé, but it's like, it's not the end of the world as long as they can try again. Maybe there's a couple of years of maturity that still needs to be, you know, that they need to grow into. Maybe the course is wrong, maybe the school is wrong. There is nothing wrong with discovering that. It's and it shouldn't be seen as a failure in themselves. It's a learning experience, and it just was perhaps not the right space. I think it's a little easier for me to answer that sort of thing. In Australia, especially when I was growing up, it wasn't so common for people to go straight from grade 12 to university. Taking the gap year is a very common thing in Australia, and I think there's often a bit too much pressure here in North America for kids just to be pushed straight through, and they just may not be ready, and that's okay.
That's a good.
What can I say, Bruce?
Yeah, that's a good response. That's a very good response. Do you have anything to add, Cara?
I agree. You know, and this is like that hard point, that place of tension for parents, because obviously you want to protect and you want to prepare and you want to do both of those things at the same time. You also have been working towards them self-advocating, and them saying to you that they don't want anything special at this time is them actually self-advocating, whether or not they're advocating for the right thing. So you can encourage, you can say, okay, well, in case it is hard, here are your options. Let me know if you need my support. You know, you can have conversations and try to guide their thinking, but we do want to honor their voice. And then if things fall apart, you're there to help them problem solve. You know, I would definitely do all of my research as a parent. What are the support services? What are the things available at the college or university? Do they have any clubs that the student would be interested in, so that you can encourage those things? You definitely want to help be like the surrogate executive function, and you know, help keep them organized and make those helpful suggestions. But again, you know, you want to be at the point where you are stepping back and you're honoring them, you're watching them make mistakes they will learn from sometimes, and it's going to be hard. Definitely going to be hard.
These are great answers. Thank you. I'm so glad we're recording this. All right, next question. In advocating for teenagers or young adults with extra support needs, What are some common challenges caregivers might face, and how can they overcome these challenges?
Dominique, I feel like you're going to have the best answer here, and I want to pull off whatever you say.
I'm not sure I have the best answer, but I do have an answer. Let me clear my voice here, my throat, sorry. There is a variety of extra support needs, and it could be something as simple as needing a place to self-regulate, needing fidgets, in their desk, needing, my youngest has like this, he has all of these options. He has all of these resources available to him, but he's in a position now where it's just not cool. So he goes to the resource room where his EA is, and that's where he uses, whether it's the stationary trike or the elastic band around the chair or extra fidgets or just a place to decompress. He's trying really hard to, and he's going through a transition next year. He'll be going to junior high, which is actually in the high school. So when we're talking about transitions, whether it's from elementary to junior high or junior high to high school or high school to college, transitions are transitions. And our goal as caregivers, and what the goal should be with the caregivers and the teachers, is to provide these kids with as much independence as possible, ways for them to be able to use whatever resources are available to them without being prompted. That is like such a huge goal for me. And it was a huge goal for my youngest and for my oldest. There are going to be some opportunities where the child may not want to use, especially when my youngest transitions over to junior high, he's certainly not going to want to use fidgets or, stationary trike in class, but he still needs to have access to these resources. And it's knowing that these resources will be available to him. Something as simple as, letting him bring a fidget that he can put in his pocket and let him play with that, or just, it could be super, super simple. But when it comes to teenagers or young adults, there is a different need for self-regulating. They change, as a child, sometimes it's cute, whether it's the walking on the tippy toes or the flapping or, the laughing out loud or the high pitched noises or whatever. We work as a group to try to work with the child to, let them stim, but finding, maybe alternative ways to be able to stim. But if they're not provided with those tools at an early age, they're going to take those stims and or those behaviors, and it's going to follow them for as long as they can. So when you're seeing these teenagers or these young adults that still stim as though something that you would see, coming from a young child, it's because they probably weren't provided the right or the opportunities to kind of navigate through these properly. So they could still be provided with what they need to deal with their the overstimulation. But in the end, I think it's important for the caregivers to just keep the lines of communication open with the child, make sure that they know that these resources are available to them. Similar to the previous question, make sure that they know that they can ask for help, they can advocate for themselves, and that there are some behaviors that are just something that, they need to work on. And we kind of need to stay on top of that as caregivers and as teachers to make sure that they're ready for that life of independence. I'm kind of going on and on here only because I'm looking at it from two perspectives. I've got my tween and I've got my teen, and they're both going through completely different challenges. So I'm just trying to kind of bring the two together. And it hasn't been easy, but it's possible for sure. Does that make sense? I got Kara and Bruce looking at me like, oh, that was just a lot of words.
There were a lot of words, but they were good words. I want to say, I want to bring a reality check on this one. I think we need to acknowledge that when if thinking of the words teenagers and young adults, I'm reading that as high school. So if we assume that that's what we're talking about, high school and colleges, especially at high school, in my experience and my teaching experience in Alberta and my experience here in BC with my kids, that there are possibly more lack of institutional supports for students at the higher levels. They tend to be focused on those kids with high support needs. And one of the things that certainly I saw in my last couple of years in Alberta was a number of students who had fallen through the cracks, but yet were still successful and got their diplomas. And in fact, the three people I'm thinking of straight away are all at university now and doing okay. But they suddenly got to grade 10 and started to struggle, and there weren't resources readily available. Now, what we did to encourage them was, again, the self-advocacy. You also will find that high school teachers tend to be a lot more, the teaching environment is different. So stemming and any self-regulation tools are easier to manage, I think, at a high school level than a elementary school. And Cara, if I'm offending you, I'm sorry. You know, I did performing arts, so everything's easier in the performing arts. So from the caregiver's perspective, I think this is very much, if the institution doesn't have things that are available, suggest those things. And Dominic has said the fidgets, the sensory break, the breakout rooms, some quiet spaces. You can find them at a high school. It may need just a little bit of organization, but the school itself will be very happy to help you in this. So, and this goes outside of possibly an IEP, because you're talking about the whole institution rather than a single classroom. So it becomes a little more, you need to maybe be a bit more creative with suggesting to the teachers and to the administrators ways of handling support needs. And of course, the more we have students with different support needs coming through the system, the more these are needed, and the more, of course, that the schools can assign them. And it makes sense to have a room that can be used by many people rather than a single person. So that's kind of what I want to say. Yeah.
I think it's important that we distinguish, stimming, which has self-regulatory benefit and is harmless, obviously, and then stimming that could get a person into trouble, like having your hands down your pants, which is definitely something you have to redirect and work on. But other forms of stimming, we all stim sometimes. If you stub your toe, you're going to be like jumping on one foot and shaking your hand, and stimming serves a purpose. It helps things feel more bearable. It can channel energy. It can show excitement and enthusiasm. And it is a big tell sometimes about anxiety too, depending on what they're doing. One of the things that is the most helpful for my students is when people tell them, like, stimming is actually okay and it's necessary at times. This is one of those places where we have to work on, like, the societal understanding of stimming. I think a lot of times people make assumptions, and I completely understand, parents want to protect their child from any embarrassment, any looking different, but we also have to let children know, that everyone expresses their needs in different ways, and we need to, like, work on everyone just understanding, okay, that's what that person does to self-regulate, this is what I do. That said, can you talk to children and say, I notice that sometimes you do, whatever it is, if it's really distracting for the class, I wonder if there's another way we can channel your energy. let them know like it's okay to have an outlet, but what like maybe we can experiment and find other things that work for you. But we want to move away from making it seem shameful when a person stims. Because
could I just interrupt? Sorry, I always need to share this story when Kara's point is perfect. One of my children has Tourette's, which of course is only somewhat controllable, and she swore at the principal last year. And the great thing was the principal looked shocked for a second and then laughed. And it was the complete, he knew she didn't mean it, because of course she's doing Bruce, she's blushing straight away. But it's also, it's a recognition that this is an uncontrollable stim. And it was okay. And, you know, I couldn't think of a worse thing you could do at a school.
I should say too, like I go into classes with my students and their parents or guardians' permission. I go in and I do lessons on being autistic. I talk about my own experiences, my students' experiences, and I show TikTok videos. Obviously, I preview them first, but I find videos of autistic people talking about things like stimming and explaining it. And honestly, once children have, like, once you explain something logically, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And they no longer think about it. They don't dwell on these things like I think we as family members do, because as family members, we're so nervous. We're worried about stigma. We're doing all of these things. But we can also be sort of unconsciously instilling that in our students about themselves.
Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. I'm like picking up a lot of cool vibes here from your answers. I appreciate it. But as a caregiver, this is going to be tough. This one's tough. There's always a way. There's always an answer. You just gonna have to dig for it. You can reach out to Kara.
And you know your child best. You know your child best.
True. Absolutely. Could you provide examples of successful advocacy efforts that have proved outcomes for students with extra support needs in kindergarten to 12 and higher education settings?
That's a great question.
It is. It is.
I mean, I think a lot of what we've already said from my perspective as a teacher, like when I've had parents and there is that like meeting where we both acknowledge, yeah, the system can be really difficult to navigate and it is under-resourced. And I know that you as a parent are doing everything you can, and you know that I as a teacher am doing everything I can. And we communicate frequently. I express gratitude to the parent when they share their insights. They express gratitude for the things that they see that I'm doing. And we're both sort of focused on the child's strength, seeing the child as a whole child. Like you get a lot farther on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Bruce?
It was the question is really interesting because I can think of perhaps thousands of examples of successful advocacy efforts, and it was like, if I may, let me just share. Let me share personal experiences, because you know I'll just throw my kids under the bus at the drop of a hat, because they will for me, and I mean this in a good way. So both my kids have ADHD. And my eldest also has generalized anxiety, and they both have Tourette's. It's expressing a little more with my elder than my younger. The first time they had, recently when they had an IEP, one of the goals was raising my eldest's self-advocacy. And I think this was grade 6. And the teacher was really worked with their name is Sky throughout the year. And quite honestly, from about grade 6, Sky has been like the best self-advocate. And as parents, we basically just support what she's doing. Sometimes we have to get involved, but it was just that 1 year of working on self-advocacy, and she's taken off like a rocket with that. And that's a big picture one. Very specific one with my youngest. If you give him more than 2 choices, he'll spiral. If you say you can run an essay on like point A, point B, or point C, he will sit, and then he used to put his head on the desk and basically cry because he could not work out what the choice was. Because he could see A, B, and C both being equal. And so this happened in, I think, about the same grade level, grade 6 or 7. We asked the teacher, can you just give two, if you're giving an essay or you're giving any choices, can you give them 2 choices? And their marks in English went up from 60% to 85%, basically because of that. And that was so those 2 examples, one is a successful IEP building something in to the student. And the second one was an acknowledgement that an accommodation was necessary. And if you gave the accommodation, the educational outcomes were better.
I also have some practical ideas that I thought of as you were speaking. So, because I'm also thinking about advocacy efforts. So obviously being forthcoming with the school, sharing assessments from, whenever you have assessments done of your child, that gives everyone information and insights into the child's learning profile, what's easy for them, what's harder for them, and often have strategies in assessments as well that could be helpful. But Bruce and I talk all the time about child-led self-advocacy efforts and doing things like, before the school year begins, have your child write their teacher a letter talking about what's hard for them at school or what's easy for them and introducing themselves and things that have worked with other teachers. You could even sit down with your child and ask them, like in each class, what are the things that help you in math class? What are the things that help you in social studies? What things have worked? What things maybe don't work? I have some self-advocacy templates that are free on my website as well for different ages, but you can design your own. Sharing that kind of information is really, really helpful too. And anytime you can work with your child and help them to advocate for themselves, to let their teacher know, I'm really nervous about presenting to the class. Is it possible? Could I pre-record it, or could I present just to you and a couple of my friends? Mm-hmm. You want to be coaching that. And those are the kinds of things where you're giving your child the opportunity to develop those problem-solving skills, the communication skills, self-awareness skills, and hopefully it goes well.
Amazing. Cara, if you have a moment, can you plug your website in the chat for our community to access? And I've got 2 short answers on this. I promise I'll keep them short. So I've got an 11-year-old and I have an 18-year-old. And both struggle with, or both require some extra support. My oldest is in a specialized program where there's a group of, this year there are 7 kids in the class. He's been in the same classroom since grade 7. But what he needs is life skills. And we kind of had to, so in the life skills, they're able to teach, the basic math and through recipe building or grocery shopping and all of these cool activities out in the community, which is great. But they plugged him in this co-op. So they do a co-op. And then, if you have children who are, who require extra support, but they're part of the co-op program, then, these are things that you can kind of ask for through their IEP as well. So he was part of this co-op for the past 2 years that he did not like. They had him peeling potatoes after potato after potato. And he didn't like it. He currently, he's recently got a job at Tim Hortons and works on weekends, and he does maintenance. So he cleans and washes dishes and cleans the tables, and he gets to socialize a little bit while he's doing all that, and he loves it. So I thought to myself, okay, he hates the job he's doing where he's doing it through co-op, but it is a long-term healthcare facility. So why not give him tasks that mirror what his job asks of him? Help him, like teach him how to mop the floor, how to use some of the chemicals, how to, wash dishes and place them properly. And so it took a little bit, but they're now working on on changing his tasks at his co-op to mirror what his tasks are going to be at Tim Hortons. And I think it's ideal because this is what he needs to be able to live or to be independent when school is over. So when he's done with high school, he's going to be working. And I'm not sure what the goal is after that, but at least this way, he is going to have the skills that he needs to be able to do his job. My younger one, on the other hand, has a terrible time with the social piece. He doesn't talk to people. He's just an introvert. So what they've set up with him at school is they have him sitting with little ones on the bus. So he's in French, we call it a brigadier, which is like a bus boss. And then he supervises lunch in a little classroom for younger kids. So he's like a lunch monitor in a classroom. And he does a delivery of the milk, fruit, and pizzas on Tuesday. So it gives him an opportunity to feel like he has that experience, that yeah, the independence. He's got a little job to do, so it kind of empowers him, but it also forces him in a way to talk with some of his peers. And he's come such a long way since he's been doing these little side gigs. So there's certainly opportunities where you can talk to the teachers and ask them to provide them with these little tasks that are kind of outside the norm, but that would provide them with those skills and to be a bit more independent. Because essentially that's the goal for all of these kids, right? All students is just to learn how to be independent. So those are my two short stories. They're never short. I keep going on and on. All right, next question. What are some strategies for ensuring a productive and collaborative relationship with the schools or university staff when advocating for a child or young adult? Bruce.
I think we've talked about this. I'm just thinking, Cara, do you have an idea about this one? Let me have a think about it.
I think we have talked about it. It's about like tone. It's about like actively nurturing a positive relationship. I think on both sides is important. Again, it's that co-regulation. It's you know, I acknowledge to parents like you have the hardest job in the world, and they'll sometimes say, well, your job is pretty hard too. Like it's like, okay, great, we got mutual respect going, and I think in both cases, so something I do as a teacher, I do like sunshine emails or sunshine calls where I make sure that my parents know that I'm seeing their child and I'm not just seeing them through a critical lens and noticing the times they're not doing what I want them to be doing, but I'm noticing, you know, when they ask someone, you know, did you get a turn to play this game? And they, you know, they make room for this child, or they start a conversation and they've never done that before. And I make sure that I communicate that. And I say, oh my goodness, you would be so delighted to have seen what your child did at lunch today. And then that also decreases their anxiety if the phone rings and it's from the school, because they know it's not always going to be a bad call. But I think you as a parent can also do that. You can say, you know, my child came home and he was saying he really enjoyed this part of the school day. Let us know. We love that.
Yep. Yep. I respect and appreciate, you know, the team that both my kids have right now. I get texts, I get pictures, I get, you know, and that is, to me, that is so important because at least one, it gives me kind of like that heads up where I know what to talk to them about when they do get home or we're sitting at the dinner table. And I saw that you were teaching a kid how to spin a basketball on your finger, Sam. I saw a picture. Congratulations. Or, you know, whatever else. It's important to have that really. I'm so lucky, but I know that this is not something that applies across the board. There are so many parents who wish that they had that kind of relationship. And the only advice I could offer them is just keep communicating. If mine wake up in a bad mood or they had a bad night, the teachers are the first ones to know whether they go to school or not, because it prepares them.
Yeah, that's really helpful information. And I would also say, so I do a daily email summary of like, here's everything that we learned today and like concepts so that parents know. And, you know, if I hear from even just one parent that they read the emails and they appreciate the emails, I'm like, I will never stop doing this. Thank you for validating this extra work that I'm doing, because it is extra work.
It is.
And often I don't hear, and that's okay. But for the ones who do tell me, and I know it's valuable, I will never stop doing it.
Oh my God, it's the best.
Their advocacy. Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah, I think now it's my monkey wrench time.
Mhm.
I think one of the things to be aware of when you're looking at a question like this is recognizing how the teacher's roles change from kindergarten to university. And you're less likely as you get up in grade level for the teachers to send an email as Kara's just described. And I don't, I'm not, I was going to say that's reality, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but just that's just a reality thing. And especially when they go into subject areas where you go from one teacher to three teachers or five teachers or six teachers, depending on what level you are. So recognize that you have to be rethinking the strategies. And certainly my parental tip here is just reach out to the teacher at the start of the year saying, we always say, we really, we want to know if there's a problem. We want to know if there's some work that's not being handed in, or if there's a struggle somewhere. Like, and don't sugarcoat it. We're both my wife and I are like, if you tell us one of our students is, one of our students, one of our kids is not doing this, it's like, okay, let's work on that. Don't pretend, or don't sugarcoat. So it's that open, again, the open communication. At the university level, like, quite honestly, the responsibility from a professor to a teacher is so far. College professors don't really care if you don't hand your work in, because that's your responsibility, and that's part of the triangle of education is the idea of the student's responsibility becoming more and more important. Now, that can be difficult for a neurodivergent student. So again, that sort of open communication without being too, just making the teacher aware that some feedback may be necessary, or that there is a struggle. And obviously at university, if the student can do that, approaching the professor, that's the important thing. And my colleagues, when I was teaching at the university level, like if someone said, I need a reminder on the Friday if I've got work due on the weekend, and say, you know what, I can do that. It's a minute out of your week. Sure, you can do that. That's like asking that question, I think, is always valid. But as you get up in the ages, the expectation of that to happen by default is less and less, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And I see how, as they do get older, I could see how the relationships may change between the teachers and the caregivers, but the goal is, while they're young, is to do everything that we can as a team to establish their independence and to give them whatever tools they need to become independent, right? So when they do get to university, they can continue to advocate for themselves, what their needs are. Interesting. Thank you for your answers. How can caregivers best support their child or young adult in developing strong executive function skills, and what resources or tools can assist in this process? I can certainly attest to this, but I'm going to address this more from for a adult or young adult, late teen, young adult. And the executive function skills, essentially, whenever one is transitioning from a high school to college or university, the executive functions essentially change from what has been provided to me as far as caregivers calling in with concerns, because you've got a young adult who has lived at home for the first 12 years of school, and all of a sudden they're transitioning to a campus life, or living independently, or living in a house with roommates, or whatever the case is. They're dealing with this transition in, moving to a different home, possibly a different province, starting a new school, living on campus, commuting from, one class to another, how they're going to get there. What if half the campus is under construction and they can't get to their class on time? They need to find another way to be able to get to class. There are so many moving parts that it really does affect the executive function and the simple life skills, such as doing laundry, cooking for themselves, doing groceries, that those life skill routines that, they kind of mastered while they were living at home, but at home it was different because they had that support. Here, they're living independently. So a lot of caregivers will call in and they will ask, how do I help my child who has recently moved to campus maintain and clean apartment, cook for themselves, do a grocery, do their laundry? How do I get them to do that? So that's how I want to kind of change this question. And that's where I want to ask Bruce and Cara for your feedback.
Okay, I'm going to jump into this one. So, first of all, I think it's really, really important, both for teachers, but also for parents, to actually read up on executive functioning skills and how they manifest, so that you understand the things that your child is struggling with and you understand the barriers. There is a lot of research. I was recently reading a study about how as soon as a toddler begins to speak, parents often make the assumption that they possess greater self-control than they actually are developmentally able to have as soon as they have words. Whereas before they're able to communicate, parents are much more, they understand the frustration and the source of the tantrums in children. So I think it is important to understand executive functioning skills, what they look like, how they develop up until about age 30, actually, and how neurodivergent children and teens and adults are a few years behind in executive functioning skills. There's a really wonderful book. It's classroom-based, but I learned a ton, and it's quite helpful. I'll post the link to it here, but it's called, I think, Executive Functioning in the Classroom by 3 authors, Lori Faith, Peg Dawson, and somebody else. Lori Faith, Carol Ann Bush, and Peg Dawson. Executive Function Skills in the Classroom. And it's really practical for teachers, but it also will teach you about different executive functioning skills and how to talk to your child about them, and how to really, in my classroom, I used a lot of the ideas from this book. And so I actually directly talked and taught about each of the 13 skills they identify in this book as executive functioning skills. And then we would actually analyze things. So when they came in and would say, oh, I beat a video game this weekend, I would say, oh, which of the executive functioning skills helped you to do that? And before we were going to do a task, I would say, which of the executive functioning skills do you think might be hard in this task for you? Getting them thinking metacognitively about the skills, and then if something is going to be hard, what are the workarounds? How can we make it easier? It just makes it helps to guide the conversations when you both have the language and you both have an understanding of when these things might come up as barriers. And then you can talk with your child about what are the workarounds, and try and put it on them to problem solve. And problem solving develops their executive functioning skills.
Oh, I love your answer. This is the best. This is exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. Bruce, want to top that up?
You should write a book about that, Cara.
Should write a book, Cara.
There were some tips in my first book on executive functioning skills as well.
Oh, you just mentioned metacognition, and I know that's
my next book is all about that. Yeah.
Actually, Cara, please put your book name in the chat as well, if you don't mind. It's a wonderful book. Wonderful book. Bruce?
Sorry, I've just been giggling the whole time because there are huge holes in my own executive function. And I think that's possibly one of the only problems with me being so later diagnosed, is I'm only discovering that these things that have actually been bugging me my whole life are executive function. And it's much more difficult. I'm 60 years behind rather than 30 years behind. So actually, I think one of the things is the resources and tools. Let me talk about that. Like lists, graphic reminders. I'm a big book reader, and so for instance, my cooking skills up until maybe 10 years ago were like pretty disastrous. And so the way I learned was I just keep reading recipe books, and I keep trying, and sometimes I fail, and sometimes I do really well. But it's a struggle. Cooking for me is a struggle. I share this quite often. I can for my family make a meal, like a single part of a meal. But if I need to do like a salad main course and a dessert, I can't do it. I do not have the organizational skills to get those three things working correctly, because I have to be cognitively thinking about what's going on. Now, you know what? That's my difference, and there's nothing wrong with that. I need to work around that, and the people I live with need to also work around with that. So it's building on the skills, but also it's not making the lack of executive function a shame. And maybe I'm being a little heavy with that, but I think I often do sometimes get contact from clients and emails, and there's almost a shaming aspect about, my child is 20 and can't do this. And it's like, well, and look, to be honest with you, the thought of leaving my home to go to another state, a province in Australia, sorry, a state in Australia, to go to university is like, there's no way in the world I would have survived. I stayed at home until I was like 23, whilst going to 3 institutions, because I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't do laundry without my mother's or my father's help. I couldn't do a whole bunch of things. And I recognize that now as being problematic, but just when I was younger, it was like, it would have been foolish for me to even to attempt that. And again, there's nothing wrong with not doing all those things that other people are doing.
And not only that, I would say the biggest factor in your child being successful is with their family members being understanding that these things are hard, and helping them accommodate, not making jokes about them, not being overly critical about these things. The book I told you about not long ago, Executive Functions in the Classroom, I recently bought a copy. I'd read it online, but I bought a copy, and for like 2 weeks I couldn't find it, but I knew that I had it, and I found it in my laundry bin, at the bottom of the laundry bin, after 2 weeks of looking everywhere for it, which is very ironic because my executive functioning skills there. And my partner just was like, oh, every day with you is an escape room, but like very, very positive. And then was like, how long has it been since you did laundry? And he caught me again, my executive functioning skills. But he never shames me for all of my moments of being absent-minded, all of the times I buy something twice, or something expires and I paid too much money for, he never shames me, he supports me. And that is the most helpful thing. And it also means I am never afraid to come to him for help or emotional support.
Great. These are great answers. Thank you so much. Wow. It's so interesting to hear your perspectives. I mean, I am neurotypical. Well, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, but nonetheless, I have to be that caregiver in these series, but it's so refreshing to hear your perspectives, I gotta say. Okay, how can caregivers ensure their advocacy efforts can consider the students' individual needs and preferences, promoting self-determination and self-advocacy?
Mm-hmm. Might
Cara,
be my favorite question.
I know. I am going to leave it to you, Cara.
It's actually hard because we've had a lot of good questions, but this was what I was waiting for. I think it's really important in IEP goals, especially, that they reflect your child's strengths in the goals, if they can work that into things. I think all of the goals need to have this kind of lens. Are they allowing your child to build their self-determination and self-advocacy? Are we enhancing their communication in ways that serve the child rather than ways that are sort of neuronormative? They're things that other people sort of think are important but really aren't that important, like demanding eye contact is one that can actually be counterproductive. It can be physically painful for children and teens and adults who are autistic. And sometimes they can't process more than one type of input. So if they're staring at your eyeballs, they can't hear what you're saying. So we sort of have to honor children's, how children exist in the world. So that does involve talking with them about their own goals. We want them to express their opinions and their feelings and have that be honored. So you want to avoid goals that like require mandatory responses to things. So it's like the child will say hello to everyone. Do their peers do that? Do their peers say hi to everyone? Or ones, often you'll see goals on things like bullying, and it's really important to build your child's skills in those situations, but you don't want to have IEP goals where the child has to respond fairly or in a polite tone of voice to their bullies. We have to be really careful what we're actually teaching with the goals that we have. So you want to have more goals about, them identifying how they're feeling, sharing their opinion, participating in problem solving, identifying barriers to their own learning, things that are actually increasing their, all of these skills, language development, communication, self-understanding. So the wording, try and look at it from that lens. Is this goal necessary? Is it fair to my child? Is it achievable by my child? Or is it like an expectation that perhaps there are other possible ways that my child can do this than this prescribed idea that the person who wrote the goal has?
Excellent. These are really good points, Cara. Thank you. Bruce, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Quite honestly, no. I think this is again like everything that Cara's just said. Look at the strengths. Look for strength based advocacy efforts, and make the individual needs is the important thing here. Too often, just to broaden this to an IEP, IPP discussion, there is a workload on the teacher that often teachers do use one similar questions for a whole bunch of different students, and that's it. Honestly, it's a time-based thing. It's just like they don't have enough time to do that. But so it's the caregiver's role and the student's role here to refocus that for the individual, and also make sure it's achievable within a time frame. Too often, to bring back the self-advocacy question in my eldest, there was I think in our first IEP, one of the goals was Sky was going to become a better self-advocate. And the first question is, what does that mean? And what does that mean and when? And so it's making sure that you're looking at exactly what's being asked. Is that suitable for my student, the student involved? And is it achievable? And that achievable, it could be a multi-year thing. And I mean that in a sense, maybe you're working into self-advocacy and it could be a 4 or 5 year project, but is in the first year, is there some achievable steps in the first year? And that will be built on the second year and the third year. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say on that, because Cara answered that question brilliantly.
And I just thought of an example. So this is one that I have pushed for sometimes. So sometimes there will be goals like the student will write in like their homework in their agenda every day. And then I talk to the student and they're like, I'm exhausted. I can't write at the end of the day. I'm so tired. Why do we privilege writing? So I've talked with their parent and teacher about changing it to, can they take a photo of the homework board or write it down? You know, we can come up with other options that work better, that are take less cognitive effort or physical effort sometimes. So sometimes we just can have the same goal and just go about it a slightly different way.
Workarounds.
Workarounds.
It's a good one. Wow. Thank you both for your points. Can you recommend some effective communication strategies for caregivers when collaborating with educational institutions to ensure the best possible outcomes for their neurodivergent children or young adults? I think we kind of covered a little bit of this previously in one of the previous questions, and that is just essentially communication. Not going into any of these meetings with the teachers with guns blazing.
Very helpful.
Trust. I think trust is important. There are, I mean, from a caregiver's perspective, there is a stigma of, you know, lack of supports, lack of teachers. And in some cases, it's absolutely true. But we need to be patient as caregivers, and we need to trust the process. And you will know, as a caregiver, you will know when the process has failed. And that's where you initiate conversation. You need to trust your child. I think that's something that we don't do enough of. We need to trust our children to advocate for themselves, because as a caregiver, I know that I've done everything in my power to provide Kandem and Sam the tools they need to advocate for themselves. And I need to trust that, you know what, when they've had enough, they'll find a way to express their needs. Now I've got one who advocates too much. Blah, 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 blah. And the other one just kind of holds off until he gets home. But it, you know, it's a start, and at least they know what the outcomes are when they do advocate for themselves. It's either, you know, it's either a good conversation to be had with their peers and with their teachers and our kids, or a conversation that needs to happen and include the caregiver, right? Just kind of, I don't know. I feel like it's really important. The most important piece here for me would be to trust my kids. I trust them. And that's hard. That's hard when you're vulnerable. It's very hard. But you have to learn too. You have to start somewhere, right? Bruce, do you have any comments on that?
I think the only thing I want to say with this one, because we've talked about a lot of the responses to this before, but and this is going to reinforce what you've just said, Dominique. Always remember that there's a triangle involved. Triangle, yeah. That we have the student, we have the caregiver, and we have the teaching community, and they're equal. You know, you need to have all three parts of the triangle. So when you're talking about effective communication strategies, it's that recognition. One, that the teacher wants the best for your child, you want the best for the child, and guess what? The child wants the best for the child as well. And each of the viewpoints is important. And this is, I suppose, there's another thing. Remember the triangle is like, as a caregiver, you may want something. You think this is going to be the best thing, but that may not be what the student or the teacher think, and that's valid. And maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's the trust that you're working with a education professional and you're working with your child who knows what who at least wants to try to tell you they know what they want. You know, this is an ongoing process.
100%. Cara?
I mean, I think we've said it. We've said it all.
Yep, agree. 100%. All right. So that was the end of our PowerPoint. And I don't know, does anyone have questions? I think we have two. Oh, Graciela, it's so nice to have you back. How are things going?
Hello.
Hello.
I am really happy to be here.
Oh, we're happy
Oh,
to have you
yeah.
here.
So I want to say this meeting are the best. So every time I come, I feel so. The first time when you read the question, I feel so nervous because sometimes I don't think about that yet.
Mhm.
So I feel anxious. But when Bruce, I forgot the other name,
Cara?
Kara, and you
Yeah.
respond, so I feel, oh my goodness, I am happy to be here. So
Good.
thank you so much.
Oh, we're happy to have you. And it's always important to kind of start, no matter what the age of your child is, like start young. You've got so many tools from these series, and on our
Yes.
website we also have a list of our previous ones as well. So please, if you ever have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We are all here to support you.
Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. I think all the people need to know about this kind of meeting. Yes, because
Yeah.
in my country or in my language, we don't have too much information.
Mm.
And the information we have is normally it's not about the question the parent have. It's more than the doctors and the professionals say, yeah, you need to make this or this. But you, all of you, have a response we need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry
Oh,
for my English, but I
it's fine.
I don't wanna lose this kind of meeting because my English. So I am happy to
No,
be
of
here.
course not. Of
Thank
course not.
you.
My goodness. No, but we appreciate
Thank
you
you so
being here,
much.
and we appreciate your support as well, Graciela.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another example of why we do what we do is hearing that it's really helpful. So I appreciate your words. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So if there's no questions, there's nothing in the chat. Okay.
Nothing in the chat.
All right. So we will end our podcast for this particular IEP advocacy speaker series. And we're probably going to do a little bit more in the new year. I'm not sure whether we'll have like a podcast over the Christmas break. Probably a good idea to do one for holidays. The holidays. That would be a good idea. Oh, okay. So we are probably going to have something. I'm going to say somewhere in November, late November. Yeah. Okay. About holidays and how to navigate through the holidays with a neurodivergent child or spouse or niece or nephew or whatever the case is, grandkids. I also actually, one of the top questions I do get for Christmas or birthdays for that matter is, what do I buy my autistic grandson? What do I buy my autistic nephew or niece? Or so we can kind of cover a little bit of that in our next podcast. What do you think? Is that a good idea?
I promise to wear an ugly holiday sweater.
We should all. Oh my God. And people can only join if they have an ugly holiday sweater. Okay.
Oh, is that really? I won't be there then because I don't have such things.
I'm going to buy you some antlers from Dollarama. Oh, Graciela's laughing at us. I'm going to buy you some antlers that light up, Bruce. I hope they're not too triggering for you. With a red nose. No. Okay. So this should be posted on our website within I'm going to say a week or so. We do have our awesome conference coming up. So our team is getting ready for our awesome conference date. Or Bruce, do you want to maybe do a quick little ad about the conference?
We have a conference coming up, and guess what? It's next Friday and next Saturday. So October 27 and October 28. October 27 in the evening Eastern time and 10 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday. We have 7 presenters, and our themes are advocacy and creativity.
There's some very good topics that are going to be shared during our conference. Perfect. Well, thank you for that little PSA, Bruce, and thank you for being here. And Cara, it's always a pleasure. I want to keep doing these just so I could see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for being here. And thank you to those who've joined and left and came back or just left. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.